It's been what, like 2 weeks since camp. I like, how's it going? You still doing all the things you said you were gonna do? You apologize to your mom yet? Do you break up with your girlfriend? If you started like sleeping more, you haven't been getting enough rest. We talked about that. What about the way you're speaking to others? Uh, all the things you said you were gonna do at camp. Are you still doing that stuff? Or maybe you're finding that all the stuff that seemed super easy to accomplish when you're up in Flagstaff, maybe you've come back down the mountain and realized that it's actually way harder than you thought it was going to be to stay connected to Jesus. Harder than you thought it would be to commit to the things that seemed obvious and simple when you were up at camp. I think I can just let you in on a little secret. You're not alone. I bet, in fact, if you were to look around, there'd be loads of other people in the same boat as you. People trying to get back in the mindset that they had for the 5 days they were up at camp. And I think some of the reason that camp seems to just make everything make sense is for 5 straight days, you knew exactly what was coming. You had a plan. You knew what was next. Even as a noted go with the flow guy like myself, there's something great about knowing there's a plan, about seeing where you need to go. There's nothing worse than I was in football, and at the end of practice, your coach is like, hey, get on the line, we're running sprints. And some kid, probably a freshman, was like, how many are we gonna run? And the coach goes like, we'll see. Like, that's the worst. I can't prepare for that. I don't know how to pace myself. I don't know how to mentally prepare. Tell me exactly how many sprints we're running. Is it 5? Is it 10? Like, I don't really care if it's 20. It sucks if it's 20, but at least I know it's 20 and I know how to prepare for it. And so here's kind of what we're gonna do. The next 4 weeks, we wanna talk about what's next. What can we do as Christ-centered difference makers after camp to make sure that we're staying on mission? What's next for me and what's next for you? What's next for the person next to you? Can I just say that if you're here and you didn't go to camp, that's okay. The things we're gonna talk about work whether you win or not. They're universal next steps that I think everyone at some point in their walk with Jesus should be taking. The plan is that each week, we're gonna unpack one thing that could be next for you. Then I think what the coolest part is we're gonna have students at your campus who are crushing it at that thing get up and share from their personal experience. Like, I don't wanna just be an old guy up here talking to you about what you should do. I want you to realize that there are people all around you that are actually already living out the stuff. And I think you can do that too. So what's next this week? This week, we're gonna talk about community. And I think there's a reason that things were easy at camp. And it's not just because you knew it was coming next, it was because you were surrounded by killer community the entire time. But now you're back and you got to sort out how to stay motivated and on mission. And the reality is you can't do it by yourself. You're going to have to do it with other people, which is an issue because people are sometimes the worst. They let you down. They talk behind your back. They make fun of you. It's hard to say yes to a Jesus-centered community knowing that the people that say they're Jesus-centered don't always act like they're Jesus-centered. People are hard. But the problem is that in spite of how annoying people are, we also know how wildly important they are to our lives. We work around how annoying they are because we know that we can't accomplish anything of value. We can't get through the hardships of life, and we can't celebrate the amazing parts of life alone. So somewhere buried inside all of us is a deep-seated desire for community. In the first book of the Bible, in Genesis, as God creates the entire universe, he creates Adam to take care of the world. But in chapter 2, verse 18, God says this, it is not good for man to be alone. From the very beginning, we were designed to function in community. So here's the reality. We know 3 things to be true. We know that we're built with a deep desire for community, but we also know that community means we have to be around other people. And 3, we know that people are the worst. And so what do we do with that? Let's be real. I have an opinion. I have an opinion about a lot of things, but you shouldn't always care about my opinion. You should care about what Scripture has to say. And so we're going to hang out in the book of Hebrews today, and it's a book written to Christians that were questioning if they wanted to stick it out, trying to decide whether or not it was necessary to continue to pursue Jesus. And you can kind of say the author is telling them what's next. And in chapter 10, verse 25, he says this, do not give up on meeting together as some are in the habit of doing. I like how he says, do not. It's a command. It doesn't say you should or give it your best shot or only when it fits into your club ball schedule. The author says, do not give up on meeting together. Speaking directly to all of us who think that, honestly, I could probably follow Jesus without other people. Like it actually might even be easier because other people are hard to deal with. Other people are different than me. Hebrews, I think, says otherwise, though. What's next for a lot of us is simply committing to staying connected to a Christ-like community. And what's awesome is you kind of already have one around you. Commit to being connected here, even when it's messy and not perfect and awkward. Following Jesus is never going to be easy, but the reality is it's going to be impossible if you're trying to do it by yourself. The thing about just showing up every week, though, is that even though it's a step in the right direction, and for a lot of you, it actually might be what's next, I think that for more of us, it's not good enough just to show up. I mean, I can go to the gym every single day and not get any stronger. I can just walk around. I do this at Lifetime sometimes. I just walk around. I sit on the bench. I do like this a few times. I get up. I go sit in the hot tub, and then I leave. Like, sure, you were there, but you weren't really there. You weren't really participating. And real, authentic community is way more than just showing up. Hebrews puts it this way in 10:24. Let us consider how we can spur each other on towards love and good deeds. There's a second layer of great Christian community. It's the layer of mutual encouragement and mutual growth. And if I were to give you the secret sauce for a community that has those things, I would use the word vulnerability, which unfortunately for a lot of us is like a curse word. I don't have to spill my guts to some kids that I barely even know. Plus, Jake, it seems like the verse you just read talks about encouraging one another and spurring them on. That has nothing to do with being vulnerable. I'd actually argue that I think it kind of does. And here's why. When someone encourages you generically, when someone gives you like a good job or a great work or you rock, but they don't know you, how does it land? When someone tells you to work harder or try again or you can do better, when they don't care about you or care how you function or what you think, how do you respond? I know how I respond. I don't like it. It feels fake. Or worse, I want to ignore their feedback because like they don't know me. They don't care about me. Who are they to tell me what to do? I think you know what changes the way that you receive encouragement and correction. It changes when there's a mutual vulnerability between the two of you, a shared knowledge that you know each other, that you care for one another. And how do we get that? I think we commit to being vulnerable. And just to be clear, I feel like this is worth unpacking a little bit. Being vulnerable is more than just sharing all your deepest, darkest secrets to everybody that you don't know. Like, that's silly. Don't do that. Vulnerability does look like, though, I like this definition of this. Vulnerable is basically just exposing yourself to risk. And that could look like a lot of things. Exposing yourself to risk could look way more, look a little bit different than just sharing your deepest sins. It could look like choosing to commit to a group where you don't know anyone. It could look like inviting a friend to church. That's risky. It could look like speaking up in your group time, even if you're not confident that you have the right answer. Or maybe admitting, this is going to be hard for some of you, admitting that you don't know everything. Admitting that sometimes these messages, this might be good, sometimes these messages that you're sitting in, like you may have already heard this concept before. Like, you know what? That's actually okay. Not everyone else has heard this concept. So maybe now, instead of just being the person that's, man, we're talking about Matthew again, the gospel another time. Like maybe just processing that you need to maybe take a leadership role in your group. You need to start asking better questions. You need to start inviting people who haven't heard. That would be risky. It could look like being willing to call out someone in your group for making decisions that are moving them away from Jesus. And yeah, it could totally look like you being extremely honest with the things that you're struggling with. Because the reality is, how can someone encourage you authentically if they don't know who you are? How can they correct you if they don't know what you're actually doing? I think what's next for a lot of us is more than just saying yes to being here. I think what's next for a lot of us is saying yes to be vulnerable. I got 4 kids and I talk about this a lot, but I mean, the reality is being a dad is the best thing ever, but it's hard. Like there are things that are difficult. And if I didn't have a group of other dads that I could like sit down with and process and talk about honestly, like where I'm struggling and how I could use help and how they could pray for me. And if they didn't know the specific ways to pray for me, and I didn't know the specific ways to pray for them, I couldn't imagine what being a dad would be like. If you want to live the good life, the life that's full of purpose, the life that's full of clarity in a world that's full of unclarity, full of confusion, the life that's full of peace in a world that's at war, the life that's centered on love when the entire world is built on hate. Man, we got to commit to what's next. For all of us, can we be students that commit to Christ-centered community?